The radio speaker on the wooden desk did not crackle with standard weather telemetry, but with the sound of someone breathing heavily into a microphone just inches away. At 3 in the morning, high above the canopy of the Flathead National Forest, Thomas sat frozen in his chair as a flat voice filtered through the static. It was not requesting a location check or reporting smoke. Instead, the voice calmly described the exact color of the mug Thomas held in his trembling hand, and the precise moment he stopped breathing. Outside, 30 feet below the glass cab, the catwalk was completely silent. He was supposed to be 40 miles from the nearest human being. To understand why that single radio call still keeps Thomas awake in a brightly lit house hundreds of miles away, we have to go back to the beginning of that summer. Thomas had accepted a seasonal position as a fire lookout at Blacktail Tower, a remote timber structure built on a jagged ridge in western Montana. His responsibilities were straightforward and repetitive. He was paid to watch the horizon for plumes of smoke, log wind direction twice a day, and maintain solitary vigil over thousands of acres of untamed wilderness. For the first 2 months, the isolation was exactly what he wanted. The silence of the mountain was deep, natural, and completely predictable. The tower was an old construction, reachable only by an 8-mile hike from the end of a forgotten logging road. Supplies were brought in once a month by horse, leaving Thomas entirely on his own. Every evening at 7, he keyed his handheld radio to check in with the dispatcher at the ranger station down in the valley. The protocol was simple: a quick confirmation of coordinates, weather conditions, and a clear sky report. Afterward, the mountain settled into absolute darkness. Without cell service or electricity beyond a small solar battery bank, Thomas spent his nights reading by lantern light, surrounded by 36 degrees of panoramic glass and miles of empty pine. It was during late August that the first small detail broke his routine. While organizing the heavy wooden desk, Thomas found a leather-bound logbook hidden behind the official government forestry binders. The entries dated back to 1994, written by a lookout named Miller who had resigned mid-season. Most pages were routine weather logs, but the final entry was different. Miller had written detailed notes about hearing a secondary tone beneath the standard radio static every night at precisely 2 in the morning. Below his last entry was a brief handwritten sentence that read, "It does not copy what you say, it copies what you do while listening." Thomas dismissed the note as the product of an overactive imagination caused by months of solitude. However, 3 nights later, a thick mountain fog rolled up the ravine, wrapping the tower in a dense white blanket that reduced visibility to less than 5 feet beyond the windows. At 2 in the morning, the heavy primary radio unit on the desk hummed to life. There was no static at first, only a hollow, low-frequency drone that caused the metal frame of his cot to vibrate slightly. Thomas reached out to adjust the frequency dial, but as soon as his fingers brushed the plastic knob, the drone instantly stopped, replaced by absolute silence. The next morning, the fog remained thick and heavy. When Thomas walked down the 60 steep wooden steps to check the solar batteries at the base of the tower, he found fresh gouges torn into the thick support beams. Deep parallel lines were carved into the wood at a height of nearly 12 feet off the ground, far higher than any local bear could reach. The wood shavings lying in the damp needle litter were fresh and unweathered. It was only 3 weeks later, while reviewing maintenance logs with forestry officers, that he understood what those marks actually were. But that morning, Thomas told himself it was just fallen timber debris from a heavy storm. By nightfall, the temperature dropped sharply, and the mountain fell into a heavy, suffocating stillness. The solar battery bank had failed to charge during the overcast day, leaving the observation deck in total darkness, save for his single battery-powered lantern. At midnight, Thomas stepped onto the narrow outdoor catwalk to check the wind gauge. The air smelled strongly of damp earth and something unnaturally dry, like old parchment. As he turned his flashlight toward the tree line 40 feet below, he noticed something wrong. The thick branches of a towering Douglas fir were completely motionless, but a large, dark shape was resting suspended between 2 upper limbs, motionless and waiting. Thomas backed slowly into the glass cab and locked the heavy wooden hatch door that sealed the interior from the catwalk stairs. His heart hammered against his ribs as he picked up his lantern. Seconds later, a slow, deliberate sound echoed from directly beneath his feet. It was the distinct metallic clink of the heavy iron latch on the base gate, 60 feet below. Someone or something had just opened the ground access barrier. Thomas stared at the trapdoor in the floor as rhythmic wooden creaks began to ascend the long outdoor staircase, moving steadily upward, step by step, with an unnatural patience that felt calculated and deliberate. The footsteps stopped right on the small wooden platform just outside the locked hatch. Thomas held his breath, sitting completely paralyzed at the desk, refusing to make a single sound. That was when the radio speaker on the table burst into life with sharp, high-pitched feedback. A flat voice filtered through the static, repeating the precise rhythmic sound of Thomas's own shallow breathing. The signal was coming through the auxiliary radio station mounted inside the storage shed at the very base of the stairs. Whatever was talking into that ground microphone was also standing outside his heavy upper door at the exact same moment, matching his terror through the speaker. The sudden realization hit Thomas like ice water that something was keying the ground transmitter while simultaneously standing inches away on the wooden catwalk outside. If you are enjoying this dark account, please take a second to like and subscribe to help us share more stories. Thomas stared in complete horror as the green needle on the radio signal meter pinned itself hard into the red zone. The speaker gave one last sharp metallic click before a soft voice came through, distinct and clear despite the heavy static. It slowly stated, "Open the hatch, Thomas. The air is getting cold down here." Panic finally broke his paralysis. Thomas grabbed his heavy flashlight, unlatched the opposite maintenance window, leading to the emergency ladder, and dropped down into the pitch-black darkness. He ignored the sharp evergreen branches tearing at his face and jacket as he sprinted down the Rocky Mountain Trail in total nightness. All around him, the dense forest seemed to echo with the sound of heavy rhythmic footfalls, keeping pace just 20 yards off the path in the thick underbrush. He ran for nearly 3 hours without ever looking back until he finally reached the ranger station at dawn, collapsing onto the porch in severe shock. When an official search team investigated Blacktail Lookout 2 days later, they found the ground station unlocked and the top hatch wide open from the outside, even though the heavy internal padlock remained completely secured. The leather-bound logbook from 1994 was missing entirely from the desk drawer. Official records listed the event as an unidentified trespasser, but several haunting questions were never resolved. How could anyone know his name without access to personnel files, and how could a voice speak into a ground microphone while standing on his catwalk? Today, Thomas lives in a brightly lit city, keeping every light burning through the night. To this day, the Forestry Service keeps Blacktail Tower permanently decommissioned, its windows boarded up, and its radio frequencies reassigned. Yet hunters in the Flathead Valley still report hearing occasional low-frequency broadcasts on Channel 2 during foggy autumn nights. The story remains a quiet legend among local rangers, who know better than to answer unexplained calls late at night. What would you do if a voice on the radio described your every move from the dark? Share your thoughts or your own unsettling encounters in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe for more alleged true accounts from the wilderness.